Hi, I'm Rachel Meeks, and I'm here to talk through chapter 1 and the discussion questions. In chapter 1, I'm talking about the first wedding, first of all. This is, of course, the wedding between Adam and Eve, but it doesn't feel like a traditional wedding because the world has just been created. And the first thing we see is that man and woman are made in a pair, but they're not made at the same time like so many other pairs. And the first question is, why would God delay in creating woman? And I believe there's a lot more to this just than Adam needed to appreciate that he needed a helper, that it's not good for man to be alone, for him to feel that. I think this question is worth a lot more meditation than at first glance. I really believe that this is so Adam can maybe start to understand what God feels like when he creates the world, or why he created the world, because he created the world for humans to rule it on his behalf. I think that this initial wait before Eve is created allows Adam to feel what God felt, feel the need for a companion, for someone to help him and work with him. And this helper is definitely not a servant type helper. This is a helper like, I'm in big trouble, I really need help. This is that kind of helper in the Hebrew. And God certainly doesn't need us in the way that a man and a woman need each other. But I think my answer to the question is that we start to relate to God in some way. That innate desire in all of us to have a spouse, to be in love, to need someone and be needed, I believe is something we have because we are image bearers of God. I think God wants to be needed, and I think he wants to need us. I think he wants us to rule the world on his behalf with his help, to walk hand in hand together. And I think that's why God delayed making Eve. The second question is, why is it important that man was created before woman? I gave a commentary reference to 1 Corinthians that I thought was very interesting, but it's neat because we have this Mother Nature aspect that's there's a lot of references to that in pagan culture and just in kind of modern vernacular, and it makes sense. I mean, it would make a lot of sense if I was going to create a fairy tale creation story that there was a mother who somehow became pregnant and then all the world's people came through her. But no, instead, God made it beautiful, and that man was created first, and out of him, Eve was created. And then, of course, all men, all people come from Eve. So this is the only way, a very unique and thoughtful way for man and woman to be dependent on each other. Their existence is interlocked. There could not be one without the other. Adam by himself would just be Adam, and never any more life would come from him. But Eve came from him. So we still have God, there was God, and then there was man, and then there was woman. We have a patriarchal, very natural, we all understand the orderliness of society, but the need for woman, how she is so important. Life came from her, and she is the cure for the curse that came in Genesis 3. They said that the seed of the snake and the seed of woman would have enmity between them, but through her seed would come a snake crusher, someone who could defeat the snake. Only through her could the answer to all the world's problems come. I think this is really beautiful, and I think that's why we still have man created before woman. It's so that they can be completely dependent on each other. Now, the next three questions all have to do with Isaac and Rebekah. This is the first wedding where we get some details, although still, like you, I would agree, what details? There's hardly any. But there's so much to be said when you compare Adam and Eve and Isaac and Rebekah. You have Abraham, who's selected, but then we have the death of Sarah. And now we have Abraham, we have his son Isaac, but no woman. And immediately we get the impression that this is not good. Abraham sends his servant to find a wife for Isaac. Now, the question is, why would Rebekah go so willingly? I wrote, we all grow up with legends. The stories we hear as a child shape our beliefs, morals, and ambitions. Why did Abraham want a bride taken from his family? Because they were just pagans in, originally Babylon, and now they were in Padam Aram, northern Mesopotamia. They're not special. they don't worship the one true God. Abraham was called out of them too. So why would Abraham send his servant to go back there? I believe that God has an effect on people. And when Abraham was called out of this family, that family felt that loss, and they questioned for years whatever happened to Abraham. Did that God really bless him? And now, years later, generations later, we have a servant coming back with 10 camels filled with so much wealth, and he tells the story of what happened to their long-lost relative. Rebecca would have grown up hearing the legend, the story of her great uncle who was called by a God to go to this foreign land. And now here is the proof that God did bless him. She knows these stories. She has already had a seed of truth planted in her. Therefore, she is the perfect one to come back and be that special bride. And it tells us a lot about Rebecca, that she was willing to go the next day, leaving her family forever. She had a spirit of adventure. She was ready to be a part of this amazing story and this amazing family. The next question, which part of the story made Isaac and Rebecca man and wife? Now, that's an excellent question that I wondered for a long time, which is why I included it here. I believe that the answer to that is when the servant and Rebecca's family agreed that she would be his wife. That was when they were married. Marriages at this time were always made to come about by family members or by proxy, by representatives of the bride and groom. Now, Isaac obviously was consenting in this search for a wife, and Rebecca did agree to come, so they do have their roles, but ultimately the families decide. But we have more detail than that, actually very unusual detail for the Bible. They said Rebecca went, and then we have like a time warp because she leaves her family, she's given a servant, and then now they're approaching. It was early evening. Isaac was out in the fields and he saw that camels were there in the distance. So you see, time slows down. We have Isaac by himself and he's looking out, and now we see animals coming. Do you see? This is supposed to bring about this Adam-like imagery. Adam was alone and it wasn't good. Now we go to Rebecca. She sees this man. She gets down from the camel. She asks the servant, "Who is this man?" He tells her, "This is my master." She covers herself and prepares to meet her husband. My imagination has taken me to what Eve would have felt like. She's created, she sees this man lying there, and she turns to God, I believe, saying, "Who is this man? What is going on?" I believe that the Bible here is trying to create an Adam and Eve type image, because of course we have Abraham and Sarah and all the turmoil, Hagar, Ishmael, but they finally get Isaac, and now we have Isaac's wife, and this is more of a fresh, beautiful, pure marriage, and they're going to start the next generation of the chosen family of God. So which part of the marriage, which part of the story made Isaac and Rebecca wife? It was their families agreeing. It was them coming together. It was Isaac taking her into his tent and loving her. It was all of it. Marriage is multi-layered and complicated and beautiful. Okay, the last question is, what does Abraham and his servant teach us about finding a spouse, whether for ourselves or for our children? Now, of course, we always like to pull a lot of meaning from Bible stories to apply to us today. And I think one of the most beautiful ones is the prayer Eliezer, the servant, has when he is searching for Rebecca, and his thanks for God. I think that we can all take the story of Adam and Eve and Isaac and Rebecca and use it to be very thankful for our own marriages if we're blessed with a great marriage, and to prayerfully seek out spouses for our children. Marriages at this time, it was all done by the families. Our culture is very different now, but I do think there's a lot to be learned in that. We can seek out good Christian men and women for our children. We can pray and dedicate a large part of our energy and ourselves to helping our children find spouses, because marriage is the bedrock of society, and we need it more than ever for the next generation to have healthy, happy, godly marriages. And this is going to be the basis for our study in the bride of Christ, because God wants a relationship with us that is just like a marriage. He has sought us out. He has purified us through the cost of his own life. And that's what we'll be talking about in the weeks to come. Thank you.